The students taking the placement test were led into a large classroom. There were only about 20, including me. I was sweating like crazy. I was confident in my intellect, and my grades were pretty good at my other college. The thing is, I had no idea of the placement test content, or if it was different from mine. I was 100% ready and accepting of the fact that I was going to flunk. Miserably so. We had 2 hours to complete the test. It kinda brought me back to when I did the SAT. Though the placement test had completely different material. The test had started and we were being closely watched by a proctor. All it took was a single glance at the sheets to know I didn't know jack squat. I probably should just kiss everything goodbye. I was practically shaking in my seat. That was when I felt a nudge to my right. One of the students there taking the test was actually a maid that my father had introduced me to the day before. She discreetly handed me a folded sheet of paper, which contained the answers to the questions. I've never cheated on a test before. I've never had to. But it seems I didn't have much of a choice. She acted completely natural, like she's done that before. I, however, had a slightly harder time pretending. That's when I actually took notice of the students around me, 5 of which were actually the maids. I caught 2 of them passing each other a small piece of paper, passing it along to another maid. Slowly, the paper made its way towards me. I wrote down the answers while pretending to think about the questions. The proctor was none the wiser. The second part of the test arrived, as did the second hour. Much to my misfortune, this section was calculus, probably my worst subject. Just as I was beginning to panic again, the student on my left passed me a note. It was a guy who was already halfway down with his answers. The note he gave me also contained the answers. I didn't recognize him, nor ever seen him before. When I looked at the maid to my right, she just glanced at me and shrugged lightly. Seemed like she didn't know who he was either, but he was helping me. Or just finding a way to blackmail me. The test was done, and I visibly was relieved. All of us were excused from the room. In the hall, I noticed the same dude who helped me cheat, talking with some of the maids. No wonder he helped me cheat. Probably saw them help me and wanted their attention. I'm gonna skip over the whole flight home since nothing interesting happened. But when I got back to the villa, Miss Zoe, my finance teacher, was waiting for me. "I heard you took a placement test," she said. She didn't seem too impressed with me. "Yeah," I replied. "It was interesting." I didn't expect to hold that much of a conversation with her. I thought she was there to see my father, not talk with me, a mere single student in her life. "I already know how it's going to turn out," she said. "You'll fail. Sure, your grades are great at your junior community college, but this is an Ivy League we're talking about. You'll get rock-bottom benchmarks." That would be proving her point. Without the maids and that one guy, I would have failed. "But if you do want to pass anything even remotely difficult, I highly suggest you take up my offer on private tutoring." I just told her we'd have to see when they email me the results. She seemed to bristle at my dismissive response, but offered no other words. It was a few days after the placement test that I was emailed my results. As it turns out, I got the highest grade out of the entire majority, even though I technically cheated my way through that test. What others didn't know won't hurt them. I called my father immediately and told him my score.
"That's wonderful!" he yelled. "I'm so proud of you, son. And as a reward, I'm going to grant you a little monetary recompense."
Well, that surprised me. "How much?"
"Nothing too big. Just a small gift of $1 million.
Well, dang. Okay. I asked him how he thought that much money was a small gift. I just heard him laugh and say,
"Son, when you've done this for as long as I have, you get used to those numbers. Why don't you get something nice for once? Like a car, or something."
Okay, well, that's a thought. Skip past a few days, the money was transferred into the bank account that I already had. My chauffeur drove me over to a local car dealership. It was my first time buying a car myself, but I was pretty sure I knew what I was doing. The car I've always dreamed of having was a Ferrari. Only thing is, some of them cost as much as a middle-class house. But I had the means to pay it off, including extra for whatever else. When I went inside the dealership, I was looking around the cars they had on display. One of the workers, a woman named Claire, had asked me if I needed help with anything. I just told her I was looking around. She sort of glanced around and asked me where my parents were. I explained to her that I didn't come with my parents. I was looking to buy a car for myself. I apparently must have said something funny because she laughed. I kinda find that hard to believe, she said. You look barely out of high school. I didn't know whether to take offense to that because she basically called me a child, or to take it as a compliment because I looked younger. Either way, she just told me to go home because she didn't have time to deal with me. I didn't really know what else to do, so I waited outside for a while. Another salesman spotted me and asked if he could help me with anything. I told him that I was trying to look for cars to buy, but one of his associates kicked me out. He just told me not to worry and showed me around. At the end, I did manage to find a sports car that I really liked. The woman associate saw me signing some papers and quickly barged into the room. Would it be alright if I took over for you? She asked him. He just told her that the deal was done and sealed, that I paid up front, over $500K. Her face went pale. As she was left spluttering in the corner, he brought me out to my car and told me that it was a pleasure working with me. As we shook hands, the woman came back out, attempting to talk to me. However, I didn't really have time for her. I signaled to my chauffeur that he could start driving home. He left first. As I was pulling out of the lot, I could see the woman running after me, waving in her hands papers. I already knew I got everything I needed done and signed. Whatever she was trying to do was obviously a ploy to lure me back in. I just drove back to the villa. When I got back, Miss Zoe was there, seemingly waiting for me. I don't know why. I figured she didn't like me enough. When I parked, Miss Zoe walked up to me, eyeing it. What do you think? I asked. Looks nice, huh? She and I stared at each other. Her expression was unreadable. It's nice, she finally said. You picked good. Thank you, I replied. I was rather proud of my first buy. I went into the villa, but she didn't follow. Perhaps that was enough to get her to stop doubting me so much. In the entry hall, one of the maids came up to me. Mr. Asher? She said. Do you know the guy who helped you during the placement test? Not really. I thought he was somehow connected to you, I replied. She shook her head. No, he wasn't. If it wasn't for him, you would have flunked the calculus part of the test. I didn't really think about that. Now that I remembered, none of the maids had passed me any notes during that portion of the test. It was only the guy. Well, that's a shame. I should have thanked him, I said. The maid lit up. Oh, you can. He gave me his number after the test was over. You can call him. She handed me a crumpled piece of paper. I guess that really was his goal, to get closer to the maids. All right, I'll call him. And if he can, I'll invite him over to celebrate. I wonder what he got on the test. The maid nodded. I'll start getting the preparation set.